the last 20-30 years there's been an obvious link between what happens in banking systems and what happens to the economy. This came through most clearly in the Great Recession, when there was a banking crisis and then a wider economic crisis. The question then is, what is the nature of that relationship? And in my view, the key thing is the bank deposits that the banks owe to us. Okay, as far as we're concerned, those bank deposits are money. And what a large body of economic theory argued was that there was a link between the quantity of money and the price level, and actually between the quantity of money and how much we spend and how much we receive in incomes. That is the quantity theory of money. Now, in my view, that theory is correct. And much of what's gone wrong in the last 20-30 years is that this theory has been neglected. So the aim of the Institute is to restore interest in the quantity theory of money. Of course, I don't want to be dogmatic. Perhaps other people have got different views about how banks affect economies. But in my view, that is a very important area of research, and I want the Institute to take an interest in it. All sorts of ways we can do that, but that's the main aim of the Institute. The justification for setting up the Institute is that in the last 20-30 years or so, in my view, a very important body of ideas has been neglected. This is a body of ideas that relates what goes on in the banking system to the quantity of money, and then relates the quantity of money to, forgive me, I'm going to be a little bit technical, to macroeconomic outcomes, what happens to prices, what happens to output, what happens to employment. So this is the link. It's between the banks, quantity of money, and then the economy. And this really is the justification for setting up the Institute. There are a number of areas where we can, I think, contribute and get the messages over. We hope to have conferences, and we will invite academics from all around the world, obviously mostly from Britain, but from all around the world, to discuss these very interesting and very controversial subjects. We will have research papers, and that's in the course of being developed at the moment, but the Institute staff and outside contributors are welcome to write research papers. There is a website that already exists, and it sets out some of the key facts, which the key ideas also that the Institute wants to develop. Then there'll be an MSc course at the University of Buckingham, where myself, my colleagues, will be setting out ideas on money, banking, central banking, macroeconomics, and so on. And we hope to get lots of students. So there's various ways in which we can convey the message, and that will be the work of the Institute. The first director of the Institute was me. I set up the Institute. I was unpaid and part-time, but we got the infrastructure in place in terms of the legal status and the accounting and all that kind of stuff. The first full-time paid director of the Institute is Dr. Juan Castaneda from Spain, and we work together, and I look forward to working together more with Juan in the future. I've become the chairman of the Institute. Juan will be one of the teachers on the MSc course. He will also be organising conferences. He will be involved to some extent in the work on the website, although at the moment I'm very much responsible for that. And over time there will be research papers, I hope books, that will be some of the work produced by the Institute. At the moment there's a lot of scare talk in the newspapers and some on television as well about a coming recession. There is no basis for this talk. practically every recession in the last 50, 60 years, really since the 1930s, has arisen because inflation is too high. And central banks and governments have decided that they want to get inflation back under control, and they need to dampen down the demand, the growth of the economy to restrain inflation. That's not the current situation, because inflation almost everywhere is almost zilch. There's hardly any inflation at all that we're now experiencing. Indeed, we've actually got falling commodity prices, falling oil price, all of which is going to be helping. It takes a bit of time to pass through the chain of wholesalers, retailers and so on, but that's going to be helping to dampen down inflation prices in the shops over the next year or two. So there is no reason to expect a tightening of monetary policy in the next year, 18 months, 2 years even. There is no case for a recession, none at all. Nobody wants a recession. Policymakers have the tools to stop a recession. There will be no recession.